things can go really well for a long time, and then, you could get dealt a hand you weren't expecting. Before we started doing client work, we'd go 18 months without a paycheck maybe. That taught me to be disciplined and think long term and not blow through all the money.
Today I'm joined by Adam Jaspon, founder and CEO of Centerline Development, a Boston-based real estate development and construction management firm. Adam comes from a marine engineering background and brings a highly technical, hands-on approach to residential real estate, working across single-family, multifamily, mixed-use projects throughout Greater Boston. He started investing back in 2013 with his first rental property and has since built, renovated, and managed projects end-to-end from development through construction. In this conversation, we get into what really happens on job sites, how engineering thinking impacts execution, and what it takes to build efficiently in Boston. Adam, welcome to the show, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So first off the bat, you started as a marine engineer, right? That caught my attention. I didn't know that. How did that background lead into real estate, if at all?
So when I graduated college, graduated in 2011, went to work offshore as a marine engineer. Had a pretty good salary for 22 years old, and knew I wanted to buy a house as soon as possible. And my father owned a 3-family at the time.
Where was that?
In Taunton.
Gotcha.
And he got started late. I think that was like a regret of his was that he didn't start doing that earlier, right? So he was pushing me, don't buy a single family, buy a 3-family, move into it.
Amazing advice.
Right? And a lot of people didn't know that you could buy a 3-family with an FHA loan and live in it for 2 years.
Yeah.
You could live in it longer, but minimum requirement for 2 years.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. My father connected me with a real estate agent he knew, and we started looking for 3-families. In retrospect, I wish I knew more about the Boston market at the time. I was looking in the market that I knew because of where I was from. So I grew up in Bridgewater, and I knew that Taunton was a good rental market. So that's where I looked. And I bought my first 3-family in November 2013 for $245,000.
Nice.
I think I put like $13,000 down. Quickly, so I inherited one tenant. I quickly renovated just a fluff and buff on the first floor.
Yeah.
My dad actually helped me because I was working offshore at the time, 28 days on, 28 days off. So I did what I could while I was home, and then I had to go to work. So he helped me finish it up, and we got it leased up to a tenant.
That's awesome.
And then when I got home, I started working on the 3rd floor unit, and that was going to be my unit.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was living with my cousin. She had bought a house in Brockton. And eventually met a guy, he moved in, they got married, and I was still renovating this 3-family on and off every other month.
Right.
And they were, I think they were kind of like, all right, when are you going to move? Right. So I finally got it to a point where like the bedroom was done and the bathroom was done and I could live there. And I did like a live-in reno on the rest of the unit. Got in, stayed there for 2 years. When that 2-year period was up, I started looking for the next thing and decided to buy a condo in Dorchester. And I found a 2-bedroom that had a dining room, and I had no use for a dining room. I think it was like 25. So I got a permit to add a bedroom, closed in that dining room, and moved 2 buddies in with me. And that really kind of kicked off my whole interest in the condo conversion idea in Dorchester. I had never known anything about that prior.
Right.
When I moved into Dorchester, I started to notice there were condos everywhere.
Right.
Obviously, I didn't know anything about that, and I knew a couple of guys that were they were doing that. They were buying triple deckers and converting them into condos and selling them off. And I was just thinking long term. I knew I didn't want to work offshore forever. And most of the guys I knew, when they came shoreside, they got jobs like at hospitals, power plants, colleges, things like that. And I was kind of thinking maybe I wanted to go a different route. So I linked up with a high school friend of mine, Ryan Oconee. And he was partners with Andrew Litchfield at the time. Andrew, I went to college with.
Gotcha.
So it was a small world. But they kind of mentored me a little bit early on what they were doing, and showed me the ropes. And then
I think rock development back then, probably.
Rock development, that's right. They were on East Broadway in Southie. And then some time went by. I decided, yep, this is definitely what I want to do. Charted a path course on how I was going to get there. I knew nothing. So my thought at the time was, okay, get your real estate license and learn as much as you can about this industry. So I got my real estate license. I saved and saved. Didn't save nearly enough, but saved up as much as I could. In the meantime, I had bought another 3-family. So I figured, okay, I got 2 3-families, some passive income and some savings, and then I will quit my job, work as a real estate agent, and try to get my first deal. Probably not the advice I would give somebody else, because as soon as I quit my job, I no longer had a W-2.
You had no more income coming in.
Correct.
Right? And you could probably not live from the cash flow on those 6 units anyways.
No. I luckily discovered I was pretty good as a real estate agent. So I was making decent money working as an agent.
Nice.
But I no longer had a W-2, so it made it difficult. And then right as I quit my job, I actually sold the first 3-family and 1031'd into a 10-unit out in Gardner. And was overly optimistic on how that would play out.
What do you mean by that?
So the cash flow looked good on paper, but what I didn't underwrite for was the amount of maintenance that building was going to need and the tenant issues, and the cash flow was not, in the beginning, was not what I thought it would be. I got that building to a really good place over a few years, and then sold it and bought something in Dorchester.
Gotcha.
So long story short, when I quit my job, I linked up with Andrew Litchfield again, and he really showed me the ropes. I was just trying to add value where I could for him, helping him do due diligence on properties. He showed me a lot of how to do that, using Boston Zoning Viewer, Mass Land Records, cold calling people for them, going to inspections, whatever he needed. And he showed me how to do a lot of the due diligence, how to analyze deals, how to pull permits, how to get through zoning. And then we ended up partnering on a deal. I still had my tax return from the year I quit my job, so I was technically still bankable.
Okay.
So I was able to get a bank loan on a project that we partnered on together. We did that. We did a second project together. And then I found a project of my own. And the next thing I knew, I had 3 projects going. And I was probably 6 to 8 months out of quitting my job.
Wow. So it happened fast.
Yeah, it moved really fast. Probably too fast, honestly.
Yeah.
We had one of the projects we did together was really successful. The other one was not successful. So that was a crash course in don't get in over your head. I learned a lot about budgeting really fast because we did not budget properly on one of those projects. And then the project I had on my own was like a full course on everything.
Wheels are off now, so you're completely on your own at that point.
Completely on my own, GCing the project. I had no GC experience. I had very little construction experience. I knew how to frame a wall, a partition. I had done some tile work, but I didn't really know anything. I was relying heavily on my subs and honestly on Andrew. I was calling Andrew all the time. He probably got sick of me. But I got through the projects relatively unscathed. So on those first 3 projects, 1 project made money and 2 projects didn't make any money. So it was like a lot of work to make no money.
Right.
But I mean, I got beyond a college education in real estate development.
That's what I was going to say.
And things, kind of spiraled from there. So started off with relatively simple projects, typical condo conversions. One of the projects I partnered with Andrew, and Steve Suda, his business partner at the time, was a really good opportunity to learn from those guys too, because we took a 2-family through the zoning process in Dorchester to get 9 units approved, and then we wound up selling those permits. And I didn't even know that was possible until I met them and went through that with them. And that was an unbelievable education. Finding the property, we got a commercial loan on the property, kept it leased. I managed the tenants. We got a basic plan set, applied for rejection, met with the liaison, went through the neighborhood process, the abutters meeting, went to the ZBA. I was present for all of it. I learned the whole process very early on, and that was kind of like a golden ticket, because after being through that process, I felt like, okay, I'm not an expert, but I can figure this out. So got through those projects, and then had built up a network and was starting to get a lot of leads on other projects. Started to do slightly more complicated projects. So I had learned the zoning process and decided, okay, well, I can look for some more value add. Instead of just a typical 3-family conversion, maybe we can add square footage, dig down a basement, underpin. Eventually got into ground up. Once we started ground up construction, that was like, I don't ever want to see a renovation again. And we still do some renovations, but things have changed a lot since then.
Cool, man. I appreciate that. So that zoning play you mentioned with Andrew, that was actually the one that you guys make good money on.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was a great deal.
And obviously, for somebody else that would have looked at that property, they probably would have looked at it as a 2-family, right? Either a 2-family condo conversion or a 2-family rental. So just understanding the zoning play in Boston, that can be huge.
Right, and
you learned that, obviously.
Credit to them, they understood that. I knew nothing about that at the time. Yeah. The value I was really bringing to that deal was I could get a bank loan.
Yeah.
And thank God. So by being able to add value to them, I was able to learn that whole process.
That's awesome. So something that comes to mind from that, because it looks like that gave you the push to grow as full-time investor, right?
Yeah.
Maybe if that partnership with Andrew never came about, you would have stayed on the brokerage side, right? And maybe, doing listings or working with buyers and sellers. So just curious for people listening or watching this, just are there any lessons learned from that time, right? As far as you reaching out to Andrew, proposing a deal, or maybe helping him out, so you can learn anything that somebody can take away from that. Because that's huge in my opinion.
I think it's just by adding value, by finding ways to add value. People more often than not want to share what they know, but everybody's busy, so there's got to be a reason, or you've got to add value in some way.
100%.
It's got to be a give and take.
100%.
When I reconnected with Andrew, it was just by chance. I ran into him at the Dorchester BSC at the gym in the morning. And caught up, how you doing? And he was like, come by see one of my projects later. At the time, he had like probably 6 projects going in Dorchester, and I lived in Dorchester, so everything was close by. And yeah, I went by a project, went to his office. He said, if you're free tomorrow, come by and we'll analyze the deal. And showed up, we analyzed the deal. So then I started analyzing more deals for him, take it off his plate, right? And I wasn't asking for anything, but I was learning. Then I actually listed 3 condos for him, and just kept showing up and trying to find ways to add value to him or take things off his plate. And he was teaching me. Yeah. And I mean, that was invaluable, really.
Man, that's amazing. Just curious, what mistakes did you make early on that you still see investors making today? Is there anything that stands out?
Yeah, I mean, I think some people are probably more hesitant to jump in. I was probably overly optimistic and was just like jumped in blindly. So mistakes that I made were like not really understanding thoroughly enough how to analyze a good deal, and do proper due diligence. Yeah, that's something Brian and I have both accumulated over time. Yeah, I think we're much more conservative now than we used to be. I mean, things like not really knowing how to build a proper budget and being very light on budget, like overly optimistic, but not just the numbers on specific line items, but missing line items completely, things we just didn't know to account for. Right. Up until a few years ago, I didn't even know what a general condition was, There was no category in my budget or cost code for general condition. It was just like framing, insulation, wallboard. Man,
I've been there, so I totally understand that.
So things have definitely progressed, and we've graduated to a more formal system. So I think a big mistake that most people make, and we definitely made, was not knowing what we didn't know, not doing enough research and educating ourselves well enough early on. Yeah. You got to be really careful. You can lose money fast.
100%. Because these are obviously, Greater Boston, obviously everything is expensive, from the purchase of the property to all the construction costs. But looking back, though, how can someone prepare for it? Is there a way to even prepare for it, or do you take action?
Yeah, I mean, the information's available, and it's only becoming more available. ChatGPT is incredible. The things you can have a conversation with ChatGPT about and learn, faster than you can Google it. But the information's on the internet. You just got to spend the time to read it. I think when I was getting started in real estate, Bigger Pockets was a big resource.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
I think everybody's kind of moved on from that, but similar idea. I used to pore over those blogs and just absorb as much as possible. Yeah. But by doing the research and networking, meeting as many people as possible, and trying to learn from people more experienced than you, you can really save yourself a lot of headache.
Yeah. Looking back at your projects, where do projects most often go wrong during construction, you think? Is it during the planning? Budgeting obviously came up a few times. Yeah. Or is it execution?
I do think planning. I mean, we've become a lot more focused on pre-construction. Yeah. Part of being a part of the Build Boston group has opened my eyes to all of the or how well a lot of the guys plan the projects before they start. We didn't know any better early on, and we would just start, and that's not a good idea. Guys like Tom Colliner and Mark Savatsky, Nick Schiffer, those guys have pretty much built the building in their head and thought through every detail long before a shovel goes in the ground. So we've definitely focused a lot more on that end of things, and it's helped our budgets really dial in. Like, we should be within 5% of our budget, plus or minus, at the end of the project. There's very little that we miss now.
Yeah.
We've thought through the schedule. We've thought through the ordering. We've met with the vendors. Everything's pretty much ready to go before we start.
That's cool. Adam, you mentioned deal underwriting earlier. Obviously, we don't want to go and do a deep dive on that, but what does that look like? So, is it just numbers on a spreadsheet? Do you just research everything about the property?
So if it's a deal of ours that we're underwriting, it's an evolution. Brian and I kind of work on that together, even though my responsibilities are more on the construction side and Brian's are more on the finance and accounting side.
Okay.
We do work on underwriting together. It's kind of a collaboration. I'll do my own analysis, he'll do his own, and we'll compare. It starts off very general. We may not really know what we're building there yet.
Okay.
But let's say I'll give you an example, a deal we're working on in Bridgewater right now. That started out as a very aggressive, 25-unit project.
Okay.
With a mixture of condos, retail, and townhomes.
Okay.
So we were trying to get a rough idea, working with our architect on the sizes of those, and then backing into rough numbers based on price per square foot, historical price per square foot of our projects in that region. Mm-hmm. And then as the project takes form and the plans get a little more detailed, we revise it and we dial it in more. But the very beginning is pretty high level, price per square foot, our financing costs, tax, all soft costs, taxes, right, interest, design fees, things like that. As we get our plans together, we can start to break those hard costs and soft costs out into actual line items, okay, and get more detailed. And the goal is to be very granular, before we start the project.
Gotcha. When do you know that's a deal, right? That particular project, for example, when do you guys know that that's actually a deal worth doing?
I think when we found the lot and we had a rough idea of how dense or what density we could get there, just by high level back of napkin numbers, we could tell that it was a good deal.
Gotcha.
The question was, okay, how many units can we definitely get? Like, if we get below a certain threshold, is it worth it? Or how big's the building got to be? A lot more. That deal's actually a little interesting because the town had completely revised its zoning, and it was very confusing the way it was written. Mm-hmm. So our initial thoughts on what could be done there were completely different than what we're actually building now, or proposing to build now. But the deal works. Okay. So I mean, if it was a typical, like we were proposing, say a 3-family, right, we'd say, okay, if it's in Boston, we know what the FAR is, we know what the setbacks are, we can kind of figure what the size of the building is going to be, back into a overall construction cost, figure financing costs, we know what the taxes are, we can look that up, and that's how we start. That's a make or break. Okay, is this worth pursuing or not? Right. If it is, then we continue.
Gotcha.
We pretty much should know within 24 hours of being sent a deal if it's worth pursuing.
Gotcha. If someone doesn't know any of those answers, right, the FAR, the zoning, obviously they can research it online, right, use ChatGPT for some of that.
Yeah.
Would you recommend for them to reach out to an experienced zoning attorney for the area, or what's the best?
Yeah, and that's a tough one. Like, if you're trying to move fast,
Right.
If you don't already have an existing relationship with a good architect or a zoning attorney, you're probably not going to have an answer in the time frame you need it.
Right.
So, I mean, establishing those relationships ahead of time is a great idea. We hadn't even worked with a zoning attorney until we were several years into our, having a company. We were doing the zoning on our own early on because we had learned how to do it, and we were doing very small projects that didn't really require. Some people still use an attorney, but we had a really good architect who understood Boston zoning very well, and we had been through the process. Now that we've gotten into more complicated projects, we have established relationships with zoning attorneys, and we're working with a zoning attorney on a Bridgewater project, for example. Sometimes it's really good to have somebody just to think through. You may know what you're doing, but you could miss things, or you could be overly optimistic. So it's good to have somebody check you. We're working with Matt Eckel on Bridgewater, and Matt and we basically have a weekly discussion, and after we meet with the town, which we did 2 weeks ago, we had a call to recap, and we're like, okay, what are we missing here? And we went back, and Matt caught something, I caught something. It's good to have somebody to bounce off of.
Matt is great. He's our zoning attorney too.
Oh, he's fantastic.
Yeah. So, Adam, you have obviously worked on everything from single family to multifamily, mixed use. How do you guys decide which projects are worth pursuing?
We got started with all multifamily. Everything was in Dorchester, Southie, JP. We did a project in Chelsea. We were all about condos, and then we wanted to try single family, and we had done one single family in Southie, but we hadn't done anything in the suburbs. Happened to find 2 lots in Marshfield on MLS, and we did those, and we discovered that we really like single family. And not that we won't do condos, but I think we really like building. We want to build quality homes, and not necessarily just sell condos. And I think both are great, but our attention to detail, the quality of the work that we put out, really lends to custom quality single family. So we kind of made a conscious decision, okay, we probably want to go in this direction. I say that, but we do have a condo project in Bridgewater that we're working on currently,
Right.
But it's been like a 2-year evolution.
Yeah.
That is definitely a path we're pursuing in the future. As our families grow, my family's growing. We've moved out of the city to the South Shore. I'm now thinking, okay, do I really want to be in the city every day? Maybe not. Or if I am in the city, how far into the city do I really want to go? So we've kind of made a decision that we'd really like to be a builder on the South Shore, Southie to Duxbury, say. Like, we were always, I think a lot of our network knew us as like the Dorchester guys. We were always in Dorchester.
Yeah.
So people would bring us Dorchester deals, and that's great. We'll still go to Dorchester. We just wrapped up a 6-unit condo project for another developer in Savin Hill. I'm happy going to Dorchester and Southie. Don't really want to go further into the city anymore, because the more time we spend in the car, the less efficient or effective we are. And I think that hurts the quality of the product, and ultimately hurts the bottom line.
Yeah.
So we're trying to kind of reel in our coverage area.
Yeah. So South Shore and ideally single family, if you had a choice between single family and...
I think we'll still do condo projects, but we love building single family.
Gotcha.
Definitely.
Gotcha. And let's actually talk about buy and holds, right? Because you mentioned earlier the Gardner property that 10 units. You said, I sold that. I went into Dorchester. So tell me about where do you guys own and what are the best areas in your mind to invest in buy and holds?
Yeah. So we have 7 units in Dorchester, a 3-family that we bought, did a light renovation on, added a bedroom to each unit, and we added a half bath to each unit. And that's been a great property for us. We have a 4-unit on Alexander Street that we bought from you guys.
Yeah. You kept that one?
Yes, we ended up keeping that one. That one's an interesting story. We built those as condos, but we held it.
Gotcha. But you sold, I think, one building, no? I think, weren't they 2 buildings there?
It is technically 2 addresses, but it's one one structure essentially.
Gotcha, okay.
It was a single family
Right.
that was approved for 4 units, and we added about 2,500 square feet.
Yeah.
Made 4 beautiful units. I think it's a 1-bed, a 2-bed, and then 2 3-beds.
Okay.
And that area of Dorchester is changing a lot. So we were kind of at the early end of that,
Yeah.
and things are really following along over there. And then we have 15 units out in Leominster.
Okay.
It's 1 property with 2 buildings. It was essentially like a commercial property that's now been converted to residential. We bought that. An agent in our network brought it to us. The guys that were doing it got in way over their head and just needed to get out.
Yeah.
So they were looking to sell and try to recoup as much as they could they didn't want to lose money.
Yeah.
We bought that, and at the time, were really busy, so we decided it was too far for us to manage the project ourselves, so we hired a local GC that we knew.
Okay.
To do building 2 for us.
Okay.
Did building 2, got it leased up, stabilized, and then we decided to take on building 1 ourselves. And we're doing building 1 right now. So there's 8 units that are done and leased, and we'll have 7 more units probably around July, August.
Yeah.
And we like that market. It's far for us, but it is a great rental market. The units in Dorchester are not big cash flow plays, but those buildings are rapidly increasing in value.
Yeah.
So those are things I assume will hold for a very long time.
Yeah. I'm curious, and I asked that question because Yoni and I have been in the same situation where we have owned some rentals in Metro West, actually not even Metro West, in Worcester County, right? More in the city of Worcester. And then we've had some things in the city, very different markets and very different tenants too, right?
Absolutely.
And we would love to have more buildings in Boston, but it's obviously a high price point, high renovation cost. They don't cash flow. So, how do you guys think of that balance, I guess? And is it just, and are you looking for a return on investment?
Initially I thought we would have all of our rentals in Dorchester. It was all about Dorchester.
Yeah.
But it has become more difficult to pencil rentals plays in Boston. It's nearly impossible to build to hold. I think there are some good deals out there in Boston. If you can find a good deal, renovate and stabilize it. Yeah. And cash flow a bit. The 3-family we have in Dorchester, that does cash flow. But the 4-unit that we built on Alexander Street, that's like a break-even property. But we've significantly increased the value of that property. Yeah. There's a lot of equity.
You have a lot of equity, right? Might not have a lot of cash flow, but the equity is
exactly.
There.
But with insurance rates increasing, the city raising taxes, constantly making it more difficult to permit or even be a landlord is making it more difficult. It's becoming a little less desirable to own rental property in Boston. So we'll keep the properties we have, but I don't know that we're unless something comes across that's a great deal, we're not really targeting Boston right now. We will probably look to buy more in Leominster.
Gotcha.
To be honest,
You like that market?
So far, it's been great. Yeah.
Okay.
We were actually really surprised by how fast we leased up and the rents we were getting. We underwrote that deal at significantly lower rents than we're getting.
So, and what makes it a good deal on the buy and hold side, I guess? And then we'll switch gears. I'm curious, like, what makes a good deal on the new construction or condo conversion? Is it a cash flow per door type of thing? How are you guys looking at?
Yeah. So
Or are you looking at a BRRRR where you refinance and take that money out down the road?
we haven't really targeted deals with the BRRRR method as our primary objective.
Okay.
We are looking for good cash flow. Like on a condo deal, ideally, or even a single family, ideally, we want to be as close to a 20% ROI as we can.
Gotcha.
Doesn't mean that we're always going to be there, but on larger deals, you might not be 20%. Hopefully you're not below 15%, because at some point you're working too hard for the return. But on a larger deal, 15% could still be a good amount of money. On the rentals, we ultimately are pursuing cash flow.
Yeah.
That's the goal. There have been exceptions to that rule in that there's some value plays.
Yeah.
But with a value play, you've got to be really careful that your expenses don't eventually exceed your income and that the building's costing you money.
Yeah.
With the Alexander Street property, we've been very diligent in keeping our insurance costs down to make sure that doesn't happen, because there's not significant cash flow there to support annual increases.
Yeah.
So looking for more deals like the Leominster property is what we're pursuing moving forward.
Gotcha.
Where there is really good cash flow.
Yeah.
And it's not like a luxury building. It's a nice building. It's a good place to live.
Yeah.
The maintenance is it's more palatable than a lot of the condo quality rentals that are in Boston.
Would you guys self-manage those?
We are self-managing.
Okay.
We use Buildium.
Yeah. Nice.
We did, for that property, because we're so far away, we put in full camera system inside and outside. All of the doors are on a Brevo access, so somebody gets locked out, we can usually help. We were able to find a local handyman who's been great, and we add him to Buildium, so when tasks come in, we create a work order, and he gets it right to his email and goes out the next day.
How did you find that person?
Just on, I think it was Facebook.
Nice.
A kid that was working for us, he found him. I posted on, I believe it was Facebook Marketplace, yeah. We were looking for a local handyman, and I was blown away by the response. I couldn't even get back to everybody. And I didn't know who to call. I was just picking a number and calling somebody. But ultimately, we found a guy that's been great, and if he decides he's got other things he wants to do, then we'll call the next guy. That's
cool. Adam, what's the most important lesson real estate has taught you over the past 10 years? If there's one thing that kind of stands out.
Probably to prepare for the worst. Things can go really well for a long time, and then you could get dealt a hand you weren't expecting. It's not necessarily. You don't have the safe harbor of a W-2. So preparing for the tax bill that's coming, preparing for before we started doing CM or client work, we'd go 18 months without a paycheck maybe. So that taught me to be disciplined and think long term and not blow through all of the money.
Yeah.
So I would say, planning ahead and expecting that, things could take a turn.
Yeah. For someone looking to get more hands-on in development or construction, what do you think they should focus on learning first?
For construction, learn the construction process, understand, from the very beginning, doing a boundary, staking the hole, what is excavation, what's the excavation process, digging for the footing, learn how a foundation comes together, how a house is framed, once you've done a project, you'll see exactly how everything goes, but you should probably know how that works before you start the project. And I think the information is all available. You don't really need to necessarily work as a framer to learn how the framing process works.
Right.
The framers are the experts, but you can understand the gist of it from laying the sill plate to framing up the gable. From start to finish. Understanding that process is a big help in scheduling, budgeting, analyzing a deal. It's important to really understand the construction process.
Maybe this is a loaded question, and so don't feel like you got to give me an exact answer by any means. But new construction numbers. I was talking to John earlier, right? And so he threw a number about what he's experiencing on his new build.
Yeah.
Is there a price per square feet on new construction?
Yeah. Where?
Right. Where? Exactly.
No, we have this conversation a lot. I was just talking to, I think, Tom about it. It depends. We built those Marshfield single families, which I would consider a custom quality home in a pretty nice South Shore market.
Yeah.
Marshfield is not Hingham or Cohasset, but it's a good area.
Yeah.
We built those for $266 a square foot, all in. So that's hard and soft costs. And we had substantial site work there. So I know we can build at those numbers, but we...
And you guys, sorry to interrupt, you guys were the GC on that.
We are. So that's a big thing. I think when people ask about price per square foot, it's also important to know how they're analyzing that.
Exactly.
Like, we use price per livable square foot on single family.
Okay.
Some people use gross.
Right.
So when somebody says they're at $180 a square foot, well, how?
Yeah.
What are you counting? But we got to those numbers. I mean, we compromised on things. So we did white oak floors, but we did character grade white oak floor. I think they were like 3 1/4 inch or something. We used nice cabinets, but not super high end. They were all shaker cabinets. I think we did slim shaker in one house and regular shaker in the other house. But we kept that package within reason. We most of that tile was sourced from Floor & Decor. I think at the most expensive, we had some $15 square foot tile, but most of the tile was probably $5 a square foot. So things like that, we tried to keep it within reason.
Gotcha.
But the house, had multiple HVAC zones, ERV, spray foamed, wrapped in blue skin, hardy siding. They're really nice homes. Epoxy garage floors, things like that. We tried to pay attention to the details, but we found ways to keep the budget reasonable. But we're building a house in Westwood for a client that is over $400 a square foot. But that's based on selections.
Right.
So it really ranges drastically.
Yeah. I appreciate you taking the
John's building in Wellesley. I can only imagine what that price per square foot is.
Yeah. No. Well, so he mentioned 300. Again, it's just a number that can mean different things to different people. But he was like, hey, it's just roughly around $300 per square feet.
If we talk about multifamily, it changes too. Of course, you start talking about fire suppression. bigger water line, elevator,
Yeah.
intercom system,
Yeah.
everything.
Everything. Cool. All right. Before we wrap up, I'll ask you one final question. If you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice when you were just getting started, what would it be?
Don't quit your job.
I love that. Yeah.
I think about that a lot. I think I probably wouldn't have learned as much so fast, and I don't know how that would have affected my path, but I think it's a less painful path if the longer you can hold on to that job. At some point, you've got to make the jump, but I think keeping that W-2 can be very important.
Yeah. You mentioned Brian a couple times. He's your brother, right?
My cousin.
He's your cousin.
Yep.
Gotcha. So how's he working with family, I guess?
Great, but I'm very lucky. Like Brian is, he's the best business partner. He's very easygoing.
That's awesome.
And we offset each other really well. So I have an engineering background. I just, in general, have a more technical mindset. So I naturally gravitated towards the construction.
Yeah.
Brian is a CPA. He had 20 years finance experience before he joined me. So he loves Excel, and he knows the numbers.
That's awesome.
Before Brian got involved, I was a mess with taxes. I had no accounting training at all. And I was spending a fortune on tax prep with the accountants. Brian has really come in, organized everything. The accountants we work closely with them on strategy, but Brian basically hands them everything very neat, not the mess like I handed them. So it's been amazing, an amazing transformation having him on board.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that, man. Thanks for sharing your story. This has been awesome.
Absolutely.
I know we got to wrap up and head out to the meetup. But for everybody that's watching, listening, how can they reach out to you?
We're on Instagram. It's at Centerline_builds or _development. Sorry. Or they can feel free to email me, Adam@centerlinebuilds.com.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time.